Coming up next on the Big Fat Life podcast, finding life on the Old Man River. Hi there, and welcome to episode 114 of the Big Fat Life podcast here on the Pink Eagle Media Network. I'm your host, Dan Rosado. Thank you so much for joining me today. So I want to talk about the Mississippi River just for a moment. As you know, the Mississippi is large. It drains from its source in Minnesota all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. It's the second largest drainage system in the country. And for the history of this country, and before this was an established country, it was a life force for anyone who lived around it. Native Americans settled up and down the Mississippi, cultivating the land, getting food from that land. Animals flocked to the waters of the Mississippi. And it became a powerhouse of industry when we sent boats up and down and were able to do trade between states. And beyond that, crossing the Mississippi. Westward expansion never could have happened if we didn't find a way to get across this giant expanse of water. And we did. So as I mentioned, it was a huge life force for this country. It was a life force for anyone who lived around it and anyone willing to cross it. I bring this up because our story today comes from the banks of the very same Mississippi. It's a story about a woman who was dealing with pain, inflammation, autoimmune disease. But it wasn't until she saw a photo of herself on a family boat on the Mississippi River that she realized that something was wrong, that she didn't like what she saw, that she wanted to live long for her family, and she decided right then and there, it's time to make a change. Let's call her up. Please welcome Amanda. Amanda Coxey, welcome to the Big Fat Life. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Amanda, how does it feel to be healthy?
Undescribable. It's a feeling I've never felt before. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to get into your story. You've lost over 90 pounds, right?
Yep. 93.
And you got rid of a lot of problems that you were dealing with, but it wasn't just weight that we're talking about. There was some other health issues. And that has to be such a turn when you wake up and you go, I don't have to deal with all of that anymore. Is it liberating?
Yes, absolutely. It's a feeling that I honestly can't describe. I've just lived with pain and issues my whole life, and it's really been awesome, life-changing.
Do you think that a lot of the issues that you dealt with, I mean, well, actually, why don't you tell us some of the ailments that you were dealing with?
Sure. So ever since I was 15 or 16, regular doctor checkups, my blood pressure has always been high. High blood pressure kind of runs in the family. And when I was 17, my mom had a massive stroke, which she was paralyzed and couldn't talk. And they think, obviously, high blood pressure didn't help. So they always threatened to put me on blood pressure medication. So when I was maybe almost mid 17, almost 18, they did actually put me on blood pressure medication. So since losing the weight, I have been able to stop that medication. And I mean, I've got a lot of diagnoses: psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and chronic migraines. So that's all changed.
And those are all autoimmune diseases, right?
Most of them, yes.
Right. And a lot of that is chronic inflammation.
Yes. Yep.
So you're talking about pain.
Yep.
What other symptoms maybe were you suffering from?
Oh, joint pain mostly. Like I said, the chronic fatigue, just sleeping all night long, but not actually feeling rested when you wake up, just completely exhausted all the time. Constant pain.
So often with our health, our food choices play such a major role in that. Now, for you, you describe yourself once you hit adulthood and you're making your own food choices and you can buy whatever food you want, you start to notice that you actually have an addiction to different types of food, which so many of us do. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, yeah. Once I got out on my own and started buying my own groceries, I just bought whatever I wanted, whatever tasted good. And of course it was, Little Debbie's loaded with sugar and pastas and chips. Chips was a big one for me. And nobody was there to tell me no. Nobody was there to say, "Hey, you're not making very good food choices," or "This is going to make you feel like crap." Honestly, no, I mean, 'cause, I was just a total closet eater and just ate whatever I wanted. And it became a very, very serious food addiction and binge eating for me.
It's interesting too because you know that you're doing something quote unquote wrong when you
Yeah.
have to hide it.
Yeah.
But then it's hard to stop because, as you said, it is an addiction because you're getting some satisfaction,
Yeah.
even though it may be temporary, from that food, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard because, like, with alcohol or drugs, I mean, that's illegal. And typically it's hard to get your hands on drugs, but with food, it's everywhere. And it's so normal for people to eat everything. It's not, I don't know if I want to say this, but it's not normal for people to do drugs, but it's normal for people to eat. So it's like, you can't get away from it. It's just something you have to have.
That's exactly it. It's not just about it being normal. It's necessity. We need
Right.
to eat. It's about what we eat, and our food choices are all over the place because I think, tell me how you feel about this, but I think there is still to this day a lack of education and understanding about
Absolutely.
how harmful some foods are and how beneficial others are. Would you agree?
Yes. And nobody ever tells you that. It's like the food pyramid. And a lot of people think of, the food pyramid a different way, but in my opinion, it's upside down. So you don't really get taught that, well, you maybe should have just a little bit of this. And I mean, obviously everybody knows vegetables and fruits and meats and all that's good for you, but they don't really teach you the dangers and the harms of what the carbs and sugar can do to you.
Well, and I even think when it comes to the, you said meats, there's always still that battle of, well, maybe red meat's bad for you, or too much of these high cholesterol foods. Eggs have a lot of cholesterol, fatty cuts of chicken thighs, things like that with the skin. You have to stay away from that because we've been in this
Yeah.
culture
Bacon.
of it's so bad for you because look at the saturated fat. Your heart's gonna explode. And we've touched on that on this podcast before, but I just think that it's worth bringing up because so many people still experience that. And it's difficult to transition that thinking when you do something like a low carb, high fat, keto type of diet, because even though you may start to feel the benefits, you're wondering, okay, but what's going on inside? For you, you notice weight gain obviously during that time when you're binge eating. Uh, you got to a point where you tell this story about seeing yourself in a photograph that like made you go, wait a minute, this is not good. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah. So my husband and I have a cabin on the river and we boat out there every weekend. And one weekend he took a picture of me sitting on our boat and sent it to me through Facebook Messenger. And I was just mortified. It's just seeing yourself in a candid photo, just so overweight and so sad and depressed and in pain and miserable, that I said, man, I know every doctor's appointment, these doctors have said you really need to lose the weight, you'll feel better, yada, yada. I'd leave every time in tears. And once I saw that, it hit me differently for whatever reason. I'm like, I don't want my kids' memories and these photos that we're going to look back on remembering how miserable I was at that time, and food being the biggest culprit of me feeling like that. So that was a big eye opener, wake up call for me.
It's gotta be awesome having a cabin on the river.
It is. It's
Side
fun.
note.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's so nice to have that getaway because what that makes me think about is how stress impacts a lot of this as well. Would you say that stress impacts how you dealt with your health, with food? Did you use food as a vice to cope with stress?
Yes, I was a very emotional eater. So any type of emotion, a flare up day, a lot of pain, I would eat. A good day, let's celebrate, go to the store and get a sheet cake and extra frosting or, my kids are being terrible. Let's go get some Little Debbie's. It was just any type of emotion or any kind of excuse I could make up in my mind. I wanted to eat. And it's like everything revolved around food constantly. Celebrations or sadness or any of that. It was all food.
Because food doesn't let you down in a way, right? It's there. If
Right.
you need
Right.
it, it's there,
It's
and it's not going
everywhere.
anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like being fortunate is being able to have access to food at all times. Where there's parts of the world maybe they don't have that, but
Mm-hmm.
the flip side is the nutritional value and what it's doing for you and how it's making you feel, which is the most important part. For you, you felt terrible. Bottom line,
Yes.
you
Yep.
saw that photo, and that photo was taking that feeling and manifesting itself as a picture, something you can look at, an aesthetic that you can say, I don't like this.
Yes.
That jumpstarts you into, we need to make a change. You tried other diets before though, right? And they didn't work for you?
I did. I've tried other diets and also diet pills and all kinds of things. But yeah, I tried South Beach for a couple months and it was successful for me. But South Beach allows, after 2 weeks, I think it allows you to add in so many grams of sugar and so many grams of carbs back into your diet that it just opened the floodgates again for me. Because I'm not a moderator, I'm an abstainer. So it's either all or nothing. I need to stay away or, have it all the time.
There are people who can do the moderation and keep,
Yes.
have the little sweets here and it's not a problem for them. But I think there's so many of us. I'm the same way, Amanda. Like I can't have like a little cupcake or a little whatever candy
It's never
be,
enough.
because then I get that want and that need. And there's a lot of different debates about what that could mean. Maybe it's a mental thing, or I don't care. For me, and I think for you, it's the kind of thing where keeping that away is our best course of action, because there's enough good food to keep us going forward
Yeah.
that we don't need those things, right? And I went through this. I completely cut it out. I then thought, I've got this under control. It's okay if I have a little bit of sugar here and there. It's okay if I have that dessert, if I have that treat. And I went the complete opposite way again.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, even though I learned my lesson, I didn't, because I thought, oh, I got this under control, and I didn't. It's
Yeah.
one of those things where we learn sometimes through trial and error, like what's going to work for us. Now, why did you decide that keto was going to be the direction to go?
I had tried all the other diets in the past and they never stuck. And so I thought, shoot, I've heard about it. Where I just woke up one day and I'm like, you know what, we're going to do this. And so I researched it a little bit and found a keto shopping list of what to buy and what to stay away from. And then it just kind of evolved from there. So I had heard about it before, didn't know too much about it, but once I got going and saw the results, that's all I needed. I mean, it just pushed me every time I weighed myself, and the inches were gone and the weight was gone. And it was just a push for me to keep going once I saw the results.
When you're a person, though, dealing with all these different ailments, including high blood pressure, and I'm sure you were told plenty of times with high blood pressure to stay away from a lot of the foods that are in the keto diet, right? To stay
No,
away from like the high fat, or were they actually okay with this?
no, they never see any doctor appointment I went to. They never said anything about food whatsoever. It was always, oh, you should exercise and take this medication. That's what it was. So when you're younger, in your, late teens, early 20s, you don't really put that together with what I'm putting in my body is affecting my health. When you're that young, you don't, and some people don't even care at that age, but it kind of blows my mind that some doctors, they don't teach you about, healthy foods and healthy choices, that, hey, maybe we could lower your blood pressure with some different foods. They never asked me about diet.
I feel that, I mean, that's an interesting experience that you had. For me, it was a lot of, stay away from. If I got any diet advice, to your point, doctors are not nutritionists, so they don't
Right.
usually give dietary advice, but they'll give the generic stuff, especially if you're dealing with anything heart related, high blood pressure. They tend to tell you, the stay away from the saturated fats, eat leaner cuts of meat, try to eat more vegetables. It's like a lot of those type of things, very generic. And there's no talk about how to make that sustainable. And
Right.
often it's not because we're still hungry, right? So then we go
Yep.
back to our old friends that are, like you said, like those little Debbie cakes and all those other, the sheet cake. And it's like, oh, this is good. And like the sweet drinks.
Yep.
So you did the thing where you tried it, you started to feel good, you saw the pounds coming off. At what point did it click like this is now my way of life? This isn't a diet anymore.
Oh, goodness. I don't know. I would say maybe 6 months in, because I had never made it that far on any other diet before, and nothing had ever worked like that. Like I said, I did the South Beach for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months. And I think I lost 25 to 30 pounds. But once you're able to add in the sugars and the carbs again, I couldn't put it down. I couldn't stay away. I couldn't just stay at 20 grams or whatever it was. I don't even remember now, but it probably was about 6 months or so. And it just, I don't know. I just felt so good that I'm like, this is a lifestyle for me now. And that's just the way it's going to be. And that's how I feel best. So why sign myself up to feel like crap and eat, the sugars and all that stuff, if this is what makes me feel so good?
Yeah, and for reference, I wanted to bring this up before, but you're 5'2".
Yes.
You stopped weighing yourself, but you were over 210 pounds.
Yes.
And all those things were creating all these problems for you. Once you went keto, you lost over 90 pounds, as we mentioned before. All these ailments went away.
Well, I wouldn't say they went away. Now, it's not going to cure anything, but it definitely makes, the pressure on my joints feel better. I still have flare-up days. I still have migraines every here and there, but it used to be a weekly migraine, and now I have maybe a handful a year. So that has drastically changed the migraine front. The psoriasis on my legs and my arms is almost completely gone. I still have a little psoriasis in my scalp. I do have psoriasis in my fingernails. That hasn't changed at all. But, losing the weight and getting the inflammation down in my body has just been a miracle for my joints. I was telling my husband the other day that just me walking from room to room feels so effortless now. And before, it hurt all the time, and it was work and I didn't want to do it. And, I hurt all the time. I didn't want to move, but now it feels effortless. So I really feel like I have a whole new body.
Well, the quality of life has changed. Like the fact that
Yes.
you can do the basic day-to-day things without it being a chore
Yes.
already is like a huge improvement. I wonder when you eliminate, I mean, with a lot of inflammatory diseases, things tend to be connected to things like wheat, grains. There's a lot of different inflammatory foods. Dairy. Does dairy affect you? Do you have to stay away from that, or how does that work?
Dairy does a little bit. I'd say about 95% dairy free, but I definitely did not start my journey out with that. Dairy is a little inflammatory, but when it comes from where I was before at 210 pounds or 220 pounds, it's such a drastic change that I really don't notice too much of a difference. But it like my food addiction. I'd like cheese. I eat cheese constantly all the time. I'd put cheese in and, oh, I'm hungry and let's have a snack and eat some cheese. So, it's kind of that addiction thing that once I get started on something, I can't get away from it. So I just had to really scale back on it, and it does help.
Are you now at what you would call a maintenance weight?
Yes.
How has that changed for you? Because for some people, going into maintenance mode can be kind of difficult.
It is. And it took me a while to get where I'm at now. And you always think, man, I can't wait to get there. I can't wait to get there. But once you get there, you kind of miss the journey and the fight, and you kind of miss that at the same time. But trying to stay at the same weight within a few pounds, it is challenging because mentally your brain will say, oh, you're at goal weight. You don't have to worry about the sugar anymore. You don't have to worry about this or that. You can have that. But also in the back of my mind, knowing my food addiction and my binge eating and my night eating, waking up in the middle of the night and eating things, it's a slippery slope. I almost want to say it's a little more challenging than the weight loss, and that might sound crazy, but it's hard.
Well, the reason I asked you is because you're not the first person to say that to me, that
Yeah.
it is challenging, I guess, because it's not what you practice. And what I mean by that is most of us have a lot of practice and experience with trying to lose weight.
Yes.
Then there's a smaller group who succeeded at losing weight. But in that grouping of people who've tried and succeeded, very few have gotten to the point where they have experience maintaining that, because that's not how they've been. So most of your life, into your adult life, you've been trying to lose and lose and lose. Now you have to train yourself to just stay.
Yeah.
That's very difficult. It makes sense that it's difficult because we don't have that experience. And it's something for everyone to understand, that when you go through this journey and you get to that point where you're proud of yourself and you're happy, and you almost need to have that what's next on the agenda. What's the next thing?
Exactly.
And the scale maybe doesn't matter anymore, but it could be a physique goal. It could be doing things activity wise that maybe you wouldn't have thought to do before. Is there any of that in your lifestyle now that you've been adding, even if it's workouts or any sort of activities that maybe before you would have been too afraid or too worried about even trying to do?
Well, yeah, just as of the last couple weeks, I actually wore a two-piece swimsuit on the river for the first time ever in my life. So if you want to talk about a new activity, that's just something I never, ever thought that I was going to do. Even when I was losing weight, I said, no, I am never going to wear a two-piece. That's not me. I'm not going to do that. But you know what? I did. And I've worked hard to be where I am now. And who cares, you know? So
It's a beautiful thing to actually have that feeling of confidence in yourself that you wouldn't have had before, which brings me to the point of asking the mental aspect of all of this. I ask everyone, but it's because it's such a huge part. What has changed for you mentally in this weight loss journey to where you are now?
a lot. A lot. Like I talked about before, just you've got, the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other saying you can eat all this, say you go to a picnic or something and there's all kinds, the whole spread out. It's difficult to have your brain tell you you can eat this. And then the other side say, no, you probably shouldn't, because it's a slippery slope. Once you allow it, then you'll want it all the time.
It's also that thing where it's easy to forget, even though you dealt with it and you suffered through it, it's easy to forget not just the weight that you had put on, but the way that it made you feel. It was
Yeah.
awful as it is. Like you're feeling so good that you think it's okay sometimes. And that happens to everybody. What do you do to keep yourself on track?
I am an everyday wearer, and some people don't believe in that. I guess for me, it's accountability for myself. If I eat off plan, say for a weekend, like when I first started my journey, I would eat off plan every single weekend when we went to the river cabin. It was usually frozen pizza because that's easy, right? If I didn't weigh the next day and I just was like, oh, screw it, I'm not going to look at the scale, where's the consequence for that? And that's just, my thought process. But if I don't weigh myself every day, then I don't know what my actions are doing. So say I go a month without weighing, I could easily be clear up on the scale again. And again, that slippery slope again.
Yeah, and I understand the back and forth on this little debate about scale and looking at the scale or don't look at the scale.
Yep.
The scale can be very stressful. And for
Yep.
some people, it's so deflating that they just feel defeated and it's over and
Yep.
they go down that road. The flip side of that is using it as a metric to keep yourself accountable so that if you do see, oh, I gained 1.5 pounds, I gained 2 pounds. In your mind, you also know 2 pounds, you can knock out 2 pounds in no time. And it's not a big deal versus, oh, I gained 15, 20 pounds. What am I going to do? And it can feel hopeless. I mean,
Yeah.
there's got to be in the back of your mind, there must be a little bit of fear sometimes of what if I went backwards, and that keeps you going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with both ways of people saying, oh, I can't get on the scale every day. I totally get that too. And there's no right way to do any of this. There's no one way. Everybody does it differently. But for me, it's just, I need to see that, because if I don't if I don't see it, then I'll just totally veer off. I'll put my blinders on and go straight to the sheet cake again. So
It's what it sounds like for me is you have a way of always staying focused on what you're trying to do. It's kind of important when you're thinking about these big changes that you've made, changes in your diet, your weight, how you get to move around, how you feel now, to keep your eye on that, even though you've hit your weight maintenance goals, is important, because if you don't put it there in front of you, it's easy to slip and forget.
yeah. And if you don't get the mental aspect of weight loss, not perfect, because this never going to be perfect, but if you don't
Sure.
get it straight in your mind, it's not going to be sustainable. You're not going to be able to keep it off. So you've got to really learn how to deal with the mental aspect of weight loss in order to maintain. And that's all maintenance is, for the most part, is it's mental. I mean, and even weight loss mode too. It's all mental.
Old Amanda would wake up, feel exhausted, even though she supposedly slept, feel pain, sluggish. I don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Probably depressed at times.
Yeah.
What's new Amanda like when she gets up?
Well, I'm still not a morning person, but much better than I was before. But I'm just more excited to start the day. I'm more excited to do things. I'm not, go to work, make dinner, sit on the couch. We do things now. We were talking about the river thing before, and we've got a boat. And before weight loss, I didn't have the energy to help pack the boat or unpack the boat, and I don't know. Every day it's just brighter than it used to be, more exciting.
That's huge for life, for quality of life. And you're not alone in this. You have a husband who's also been doing the keto journey with you. You have children like that. You need to be those things, right? You need to have that brighter look on life and to be the best mom and wife you can be.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's that been like to have a partner in this? Because, a lot of us do this by ourselves. We do separate diets sometimes when you're married, but having someone do this with you, has that been a big motivator getting through it?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been great. And I feel for those people that don't have their spouses on board, or, that have kids and refuse to eat the healthy stuff, and my kids they're not perfect. They'll eat healthier, but they still want, the cookies every once in a while and stuff like that. But having that support system is wonderful. Even if it's a friend you can call, or somebody on Instagram that you can chat with, just having somebody that gets you and understands what you're trying to do is huge.
Did you find that the weight loss was coming off without even working out? Did you have to incorporate workouts to get yourself further along?
At first, because I was in pain all the time and did not want to move at all. I did not do any type of exercises at all. I think I want to say it was probably 5 months in, 4 months in, I started just walking on the treadmill. And that's all I did, was 20 to 25 minutes of just a nice brisk walk on the treadmill. And that's all I did, 5 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week. But at first, no. I'm a believer in weight loss starts in the kitchen. I mean, technically at the grocery store, but it's the food. You can't eat the crap and go to McDonald's and eat all that garbage and then say, hey, I have to work extra hard at the gym. I mean, obviously cardio and exercise is good for your heart and all that jazz. But for weight loss, it really starts with the food, period.
Yeah, and there's also is a bit of danger that people can get into when they try to eat off plan or eat whatever they want, and then, well, I'm just going to burn it off at the gym, or that can get dangerous. That can get slippery. That whole slope, because you're allowing yourself to binge eat, and your relationship with food is completely messed up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest part of all this. It's like I agree with you. It starts in a grocery store. That's an even better point.
Yeah.
I would say in the kitchen, but you're right. And you want to work on that relationship with food, because food can't be your source of, oh, I'm going to feel better about my crappy day because I ate all this crap. You just, that's not a healthy way to go about it. You have gone through this now where you don't turn to food as a source of comfort.
Right.
Is that a liberating change as well?
Very freeing. Yeah. I've never been like that since I was a kid. I may not have been overweight as a kid until I got into my adulthood, but I mean, as far back as I can remember, is everything revolved around food.
Do you ever have days, like hard days, where you like think about that sheet cake that will make me feel something, or that little Debbie snack or anything like that?
Oh,
Or you
sure.
past it? Yeah,
Yeah,
still
yeah.
happens.
Oh, yeah. You still think about it and think, "Oh man, that's so good." But you go get your Quest cookie or your Rebel ice cream, something like that instead. It all comes down to discipline of what choices you're going to make.
Do you track your food? Like, do you weigh food? Are you like, super strict about this?
Now, no. When I was in weight loss mode, I'd go through stages of weighing just to make sure that I was on track with getting enough protein and getting enough calories. And I still keep a mental track of total carbs and net carbs now. But the majority of the weight that I lost without tracking. Like I said, I'd jump into my carb manager every once in a while just for a few days and see where I was at. But I don't care for tracking unless I have to.
There's a lot of different schools of thought on tracking. Some people find it very stressful to do. Some people find it like the only way they can do this, and it's to each their own. I think that there are plenty of people like you though who've used it just to make sure they're doing it right,
Mm-hmm.
and then they kind of go by moving on without tracking because they figured it out because they've trained themselves.
Yes, and there's a huge difference between tracking and weighing your food. If you're eyeballing that tablespoon or eyeballing that cup of whatever it is, that can get way out of control. You could be eating 3 times what you're really putting into your tracker. So just because you're putting it in the tracker doesn't mean anything. If you're weighing it and then you're putting that weight in the tracker, that's where you need to be. Weighing your food is the way to go. So if you're tracking it without weighing it, there's really no
Oh,
point.
100% agree. You need to, the like a lot of these apps, like you mentioned, and my Fitness Pal and those other ones, they get to give you the value of that. So if you say I'm having 10 grams of this beef or whatever, or chicken, what does that mean? Doesn't mean anything unless you have to kind of, they go hand in hand,
Unless you're
right?
actually eating the 10 grams. Yep.
Right. So you know that's what you're eating. Then you get to see, well, how much fat was in there, how much protein was in there.
Yep.
Or, if there's something with net carbs, that when you're on keto, the net carbs matter a lot. So you mentioned, having those substitutes like Quest or Rebel ice cream. Do you think it's important, or can it be dangerous to have keto snacks available in those situations where you're craving something?
Both. So I'm a very big sweets eater. I mentioned cake and Little Debbie's and that sort of thing. Sweets is very important to me. So my whole journey, I ate the keto treats, I call them, the products. I ate that my whole journey. The problem with that is to not overeat that because, oh, it's keto, it's sugar free, I can have it. Well, sure you can, but if you eat 4 Quest cookies, that's not going to do anything for you. So I think being prepared, if you're going to a birthday party or something like that, taking something with you that you can have, that absolutely thinking ahead and having something that is on your plan is important. But at the same time, if you're going to overeat them and you don't want to have them in your house at all, you could just go down to the gas station and get some Little Debbie's. So if you have them on hand, you might make a better choice. But again, everybody has a different opinion on that and thinks a little differently. But to me, the keto sweets, the alternatives is and was important to me.
Right. And I think it's again, it goes back to working on that relationship with food, because you're working on losing weight, you're working on making yourself feel better, and ridding yourself of some of the ailments that you've been suffering with. And that goes back to the food. So if you're substituting one type of food to binge with another type of food to binge, you haven't solved the problem.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I think that's what goes on inside your mind and how you relate to things, and what are you going to use to get through the hard times and through the stresses that are not food. And
Yeah.
that's something that I think a lot of us are searching for. That's why some people use workouts, a lot of people use different activities, but you have to find that thing that's going to get you through those moments, because those moments aren't going to go away. Life is going to
Right.
stress you out left and right? So you have to figure that out. Amanda, before I let you go, I want to ask you the big fat 5 questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. The first one is always the easy one. What is your favorite food?
Keto or non-keto?
How about you give us both? Because I love to hear what people are eating on keto. Gives me some tips maybe, but in general.
Non-keto, definitely cake with regular frosting. It's got to be buttercream frosting, none of the whipped stuff. Keto wise, gosh, I don't know. I'm drawing a blank here. Probably keto pizza. Pizza's a big one for me. I love pizza.
I love pizza too. That would always be my favorite food. When it comes to keto pizza, are you making your own? Is it like the frozen ones that like the Quest makes, or?
I've done both. I think I've done about just every keto pizza recipe, but the Quest ones are okay. The ingredients aren't as clean, but they taste good and they work in a pinch. Keep them in the freezer in case. But I've made a lot of different pizza crust recipes, and my favorite would be the chicken crust. It's good.
I just did that recently. It didn't look that great, which is why I didn't post it. I think I rushed it, but it tasted amazing. Chicken
Did
crust.
you
It's based.
did you
Go
use
ahead.
ground chicken or canned chicken?
Ground chicken.
Do canned chicken and eggs with grated Parmesan. It's way better.
And Italian seasoning.
Yeah, you can season everything always.
So egg, canned chicken, grated Parmesan,
Yep.
and cook that. You cook that first,
Yep.
and that becomes your crust. Then you add like the sauce and the cheese and your toppings.
Yes. The canned chicken is way better than the ground chicken, in my opinion.
When you take the canned chicken, see, now I'm getting into this because this is going to be totally what I do this weekend. When you get into the canned chicken, are you grounding that up, or are you like dicing it up, or how does that
No,
like?
the canned chicken, when you mix it all up, it'll shred itself. So it'll be
It's like
little,
tuna, right?
yeah, it'll be little shreds of
Ah,
chicken. It's perfect.
okay. All right. All right. You heard it here. Amanda tells you how to do it. If it's great, I'll post it. If it's not good, I'll never speak to you again. So just kidding. What's your favorite activity to do?
Go boating on the river.
I knew you were going to say that. It sounds amazing.
It is.
I've actually never even seen the Mississippi. I haven't been there yet. It's quite vast and expansive.
Yeah, and it's not clear like ocean water. It's definitely the muddy Mississippi, but man, it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Mosquitoes.
Oh yeah.
You gotta watch out for those mosquitoes.
That's right.
We talked about stress before, and a lot of times we try to find those things that de-stress us. We use music or books or movies or TV shows to kind of get our mind off stuff. What's your favorite thing of those?
My number one is music. Absolutely every time. Stressful day, put the AirPods in, music. Anything other than that, I like taking a hot bubble bath. That's nice and relaxing, and I enjoy that.
What's your go-to music?
I like rock and heavy metal music.
Yeah, give me a band, give me a song, give me something. I like specifics.
Okay, so I do. If you look at my page, I mostly wear band T-shirts. So I've got Slipknot and Godsmack and Tool and A Perfect Circle and Five Finger
And that
Death
helps
Punch.
you de-stress.
It does. It does. I get that question often. How does that kind of music de-stress? And I don't know. I've just always liked that type of music.
Is there a more badass, angry band name than Five Finger Death Punch?
It is. It is. That's.
I honestly, the first time I ever listened was because of the name. I'm like, Five Finger Death Punch. What does it sound like? Oh, it sounds like what it is.
Yep.
It sounds like I need to take 3,000 pounds, put it over my head, and throw it at someone. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, and it just makes you feel better when you do that.
It does. Don't throw it on anyone. But yes, yes, absolutely. Push heavy things, take out your frustrations on stuff, and then life is awesome afterwards. I agree. I understand that.
Exactly.
I respect that. Best piece of advice, either that you like to give people or maybe you've received on this journey?
I'll say my favorite quote that I found in the very beginning of my journey that has always stuck with me. Now, if it's a music lyric and I hear it one time, it's stuck. If it's a movie and I'm reciting a movie, I have no idea what I just heard. But this quote really stuck with me. So it says, if you don't give up now, just think of where you'll be a year from now.
If you don't give up now, think of where you will be a year from now, which is just another way of saying, imagine how great you can be.
Yeah. And oh, what was the other one? There's another one that's really good. If you want something you've never had, you have to do things you've never done.
I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
I like the word usage there. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think I said the first one wrong, but you know what I mean.
No, I like the first one too, but this one, it's like a nice way to like play with those words to make it sound like, oh, I get it. It's true though. I mean, if the things that you've never done before, mm-hmm. that means that you have to pick up a whole new group of things you got to do now to make it happen. So yep. I've never been at my goal weight. Well, then you're going to have to change something about what you're doing now to get there.
Yep. You've got to do things you've never done to get there.
Yeah. I like it. I love it. Actually, I think that's a great piece of advice. Amanda, what kind of goals do you have for yourself moving forward?
My goals, I think, would be to just maintain where I'm at. Obviously, I don't ever want to go back to where I was. I would like to continue my kids on this path that I have finally learned in my adulthood of reading labels and making better choices. And I hope that they follow that. Of course, letting them be kids at the same time. But I just want them to know nutrition wise and health and weight wise way before I figured it out.
Have you noticed a change in your relationship with your children and your husband as you've gone through this journey where you are now?
Yeah, because I'm able to do more things than I was before. So I feel like I'm a part of things more than I was before. I didn't have the energy and I never felt good. I always felt like crap. And I mean, of course I have those flare up days and those bad days, but 99% of the time I'm right there with them doing, tubing on the river and doing those things with them, when before, no way.
Well, it sounds like you're living your best life, Amanda. We're really happy for you and how you're doing on this journey. Before we go, I want people to have an opportunity to reach out to you. How's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. I am on Instagram and my handle is KetoAmanda88. That page I have is just to show everybody that I am nobody special. I'm nobody different. I'm just like everybody else. Showing my struggles and success, and I'm just like everyone else. And I want them to see that if I can do it, they can do it too. So I post daily on my Instagram.
Perfect. And we'll put that in our show notes. Amanda, thank you again for being on the show with us and telling your story.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hearing Amanda's story just now, I started thinking about vanity. Now, vanity often has this negative connotation. It almost sounds like a sin, don't be so vain. And it's like vanity is somehow gonna kill our soul. But I think vanity can be an excellent motivator for us because we can have a lot going on. Amanda had a lot going on inside. She felt pain and inflammation. And quite often, let's be honest, we have a lot of cues internally that are telling us we need to change something and we don't do it. And some of us, myself especially, will see that photograph or see that reflection and think, I don't like what I see. I got to change this. And if that's what it takes sometimes to make a healthy change, and I stress healthy change, and lose excess weight that's holding you back, then that's what you got to do. The other things follow. So there's nothing wrong with vanity. I think I embrace vanity because when I see myself, I'm reminded of what needs to change in every positive way. It's funny, last week we spoke with a guest, Iggy, who mentioned that in our lives that are very stressful, he compared it to a sheet of white paper. And that if you put a little dot, if you took a marker and just put a little dot on that sheet of white paper, we would be staring at that little dot and not see all of what's going on around it. And when it comes to ourselves, when it comes to the image we're projecting, there's a lot of good, right? Hopefully we're all got a lot of good in us, and people love us for who we are and what we do to make their lives better. But we focus on that dot because that dot is very, well, let's be honest, it's very annoying. We see it and we're like, oh, I gotta change that. I don't want that there. And in this, quote unquote metaphor, that dot is what we don't like about our bodies when we see the excess weight. And we think, how can we wipe that off? Now, we have a lot of good in us and we embrace that. But when we see those things that we don't like and that we know are unhealthy, I don't see the problem in using that fuel to get through this journey, because the weight loss journey is hard. So use every tool you have to. Look at the picture, look in the mirror, think about how you feel and how you can be so much better. That's what Amanda did. And it's like she found new life on that Mississippi River. Thank you once again for tuning into the show. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you are allowed to leave a rating and review, so feel free to do so, as we appreciate the feedback. If you listen somewhere else and you want to let us know how you feel, you can reach us on Instagram and Facebook at Big Fat Life Podcast, and on Twitter, we're Big Fat Life Pod. As always, I thank you for allowing me to share my journey and the story of so many others. Remember, it's a long journey, it's a big fat journey, but one we can reach as long as we stay the course and stay strong. Music in the show, You Can't Fail by Destiny and Time. Our theme song is Clear Eyes by Silent Partner. Our amazing producer is my awesome wife, Alyssa Rosado. Thanks again for listening. Have a great week.